welcome back to Big Red Wired. The podcast was amazing last week. Got nearly 200 views, but for a wrestling podcast, that is great analytically. I got to give a shout out to my guys over at Red Sea Scrolls for the much love for the wrestling coverage I've been providing. Kyler, we got to hear from head coach Mark Manning today. We're recording this on a Wednesday to preview Iowa mostly and touch on a little bit of Ohio State, but it's a massive weekend for the Big Red. And we're going to touch on Iowa primarily, and we might do something on Saturday previewing Nebraska versus Ohio State and recapping Iowa if you guys are interested. So let us know in the comments below if you would like another podcast. But Kyler, you point out the nugget that you asked Coach Manning today.
Yeah, I just asked Coach Manning how it impacts him to know that Nebraska wrestling hasn't beat Iowa in 20 years. And he kind of laughed it off a little bit and said that he stopped thinking about it, in the last few years. But I mean, it's a very relevant topic, and I do think it matters, right? Whenever you're an underdog, and especially in a rivalry. I mean, they were playing nearly every year before Nebraska joined the Big Ten. It's something you circle on your calendar, and I think it'll mean more come Friday.
And Manning even said, he said this is a big time rivalry, and the fans know what to expect for this. So I think if you're a Nebraska fan, you almost like that kind of motivates you and gets you pumped up for Friday. But we're going to start off once again backwards because Manning added more clarity on AJ Ferrari. His case legally in both Nebraska and Texas apparently has been resolved, and he went down to Texas, I guess, the day after he was arrested and got that taken care of, and kind of he said, I wish he would have paid the fine or the ticket once he got it, but apparently his parents didn't even know about it. So there was a bunch of AJ Ferrari nuggets from the day.
Yeah, I think it was a situation that, obviously when the news breaks that AJ Ferrari's arrested, everything kind of comes blown out of proportion. But it seemed to me the way Manning was talking that they have a handle on it. Everything's been taken care of inside the program. And I don't think we'll have to worry about anything regarding that situation for the rest of the season.
And that's big for Nebraska. And he said that AJ kind of took responsibility, apologized to the team. But we also have some more to talk about. AJ, of course, Hopkey, he edged out 2-1 last Friday night, and afterwards he did that in Minnesota and a little bit of other stuff, and actually cost Nebraska its 21st point. Manning, yeah, he said he had to talk to him and say, you cannot do that going forward. And I think that it's just been a process this whole season of just honing in on Manning's culture and everything. And Ferrari's always been a polarizing figure in the sport, and he's got a big following. And I think that that's just another learning moment for Ferrari, that he's got to keep himself cool in those dire situations.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it was a bout that had a lot of emotions in it. I mean, you saw that third period, how many stoppages we had. It was just kind of a grind it out to the end. And then you see him do the splits. Maybe one of the assistant coaches tried to encourage against that. I don't think that that's going to be stopped, especially on Friday if he gets the victory. But yeah, like Manning said, it's something that can't happen going forward, and I don't think that it will again.
Back on Minnesota, I was just amazed with Antrell Taylor. Back-to-back pinfalls in the past two bouts he's had. And this, I felt, really just shifted the momentum. I know you individually wrestle each match, but when Antrell won that match, I immediately started writing Antrell Taylor sparks Nebraska's comeback, because Nebraska was down 9-3. Antrell loses, you're down 12-3. Instead, you get a tie duel with Taylor, and I really liked how Manning just said, this guy's just a team wrestler. He does what's best for the team. He's trailing. He still fights till the final end of the period.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that changed the entire course of the matchup, right? You're down 6-3 right ahead, or 9-3, excuse me, right before intermission. Millard really wrestled well. I mean, he controlled the mat really for the majority, other than the last 30 seconds. But it's something you can't do against a national champion, and that national champion energy kind of came out of him there.
Well, let's roll into this Nebraska-Iowa projected bouts, just some little nuggets and everything. We're going to be starting at 125. That's what Mark Manning said today. we were just kind of wondering what goes into that. Why would they want to start, or maybe at 157 they did for one duel? And it sounds like that was another team's choice, but he said we like to start at 125 and build up to heavyweight. And Alan Kaler once again came up, lost in I believe it was a 4-1 decision to Dory Volk, who was in the top 10 at Minnesota. Has another one this Friday night against Dean Peterson, who is number 6, and he's a senior.
Yeah, with Kaler, it's kind of about expectation too. I mean, early in the season, the expectations weren't high from anybody at 125, whether it was him or Lordson. Now, going forward, I don't expect Kaler to beat Peterson this weekend, but I did like what I saw against Dory Volk, and I do think he's continued to improve. And that's just going to be something that you're going to have to monitor throughout the end of the season into the Big Ten conference tournament, and then see how he makes that jump next year.
Yeah, and I think the key is, once again, you don't expect him to pull off an upset. If he does, that's great for Nebraska. That's huge. But just the ability to hang on and only make sure it ain't a major. He's competing the entire 3 periods, so you're encouraged from that sophomore, and you can see that fight and aggression that Manning was really demanding after the Oklahoma State duel.
Yeah, it's really about bonus points there. You don't want to take a pin. You don't want to take a major decision or a tech fall. And like you said, something obviously changed after the break when they came back. Manning insinuated they'd have a wrestle off. And since they did, it's been a different version of Kaler.
Next up at 133, we have Jacob Van D. But before we get into that, I meant to throw this up. These were the results from Nebraska's duel against Iowa last year. Now, there are some different names, obviously, since it was from the year prior, but you can kind of get a glimpse of it. Nebraska lost 19-16 to the Hawkeyes. But this brings up 133, where there's going to be another Ayala Van D rematch, and Ayala beat Van D in a 4-2 decision last year. However, I think if you're Nebraska and with what Van D, I mean, we were talking a little bit, and he hasn't lost a match since the Navy Classic, which was a season.
Yeah, undefeated in dual matches this year. Van D is a top 10 matchup. Last year versus Ayala, it was a little bit of a late takedown by Ayala in Iowa City, right? That always plays a big factor in it. But kind of like Manning talked today, I mean, he's very underrated. Doesn't get a lot of national recognition like some other guys on the team have. And I think he's really probably the most important wrestler in the lineup, most nights.
Yeah, and even last week, he seemed a little off, only winning a 1-0 decision, but still he finds a way, and that's so pivotal, I think, especially when you get the team scoring. And in wrestling, a guy can be, man, I'm trailing or something, it ain't going right, and they can crumble. You don't see that across Nebraska's lineup. They fight till the end. I mean, there's already some exceptions. I mean, Hardy getting pinned against Vega and Oklahoma State, that kind of seemed like it's like, man, he just kind of essentially almost felt like he gave up. But ever since then, you haven't really seen that from any of Nebraska's grapplers.
Yeah, certainly. The Hardy situation kind of just felt like the lowest of the lows it could possibly get in that frame of time. But we heard today it was really good defensively for Minnesota in that matchup. Van D did a good job staying in it, the whole time, and that just comes with experience, right? He's a junior All-American, and he really just sets the tone there.
Well, and that brings us up to 2 guys who were out of Nebraska's lineup this past Friday night. One being 3-time All-American Brock Hardy. He was just resting. Manning confirmed that, and it sounds like it's essentially confirmed that Hardy and Lamer will be in Nebraska's lineup this coming Friday.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that you're going to see Brock Hardy. It's if he wins against Nasir Bailey, it'll be his 100th career win. The problem is I really like Nasir Bailey, and he's wrestling really well right now. He just defeated number 7 Braden Davis last week. It was Iowa's only win across the lineup, and their 32-3 loss. And it's going to be really tough, especially going against the Little Rock transfer.
Yeah, this is one of those essentially toss-ups. We go off the Intermat rankings, or at least in Hardy's number 3, 12-3 on the season. Bailey is 10-3, ranked number 10. But you just know that this is going to be one of those ones that goes down the wire and possibly has to go to sudden victory.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the top 3 bouts of the night, and I think it's going to tell you a lot about the way that the match ends up going.
And then that brings us up to Chance Lamer, who's going to have himself quite the battle. He's taking on Ryder Block. He's a sophomore, so Lamer's seniority has that veteran presence, but he's back. He's feeling well. Manning said, I guess he was sicker than a dog. It kind of sounded like going up to the duel last Friday, but he's good to go, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, Lamer, this is an interesting match because I think it's really going to come down to who makes the least mistakes and at what time those mistakes are made. Lamer's done a good job in terms of riding time. That could be a factor, as we go on. Block didn't wrestle very well against Penn State, but who did for Iowa? I think he'll rebound a little bit better this week, and it'll be a close matchup.
Yeah, I mean, that was Iowa's largest margin of defeat at home since 1966 against Oklahoma when the Hawkeyes lost 39-0, which is insane. And you were talking about just Brands' press conference. He was not happy. But yeah, Penn State right now, and of course, Ohio State coming to Lincoln on Sunday. Those two programs, it seems like they're just above everybody else. But I think that those Hardy and Lamer are toss-ups. And you could even say this about Taylor's matchup. He's got himself Jordan Williams, who is another junior versus junior. He's ranked 12th in the Intermat rankings. But I still think that just he's so clutch of late that I really like Taylor in this one.
Yeah, I like Taylor too. Williams kind of struggled at the beginning of the season. He's found his rhythm a little bit since then. But I mean, Taylor, you saw in the last two, right? Two Big Ten wins in this season, a regular season play, both by pinfall. At this point, I think that he's wrestling the best that he has all season long. He's not dealing with those injuries that were kind of hinted towards earlier this year at the National Duels Invitational. So I wouldn't be surprised at all at a Taylor major decision victory.
Yo, you're calling major. Holy.
That's not necessarily a prediction, but that's just, I just, with the way that he's wrestling right now, I don't see anybody, until we get into these later matchups, Penn State, Ohio State, that could really be that big of an issue for him.
I mean, you prove a good point. And like you said, you see this sense of just Taylor's on a whole different level from when the season began. And if you're a Nebraska fan, you have to love where that's at. Anyway, next up at 165, LJ Araujo. Once again, last week he finally snapped that 3-bout losing streak. And he has another one this week against senior Michael Caliendo, I believe. Caliendo. I can't even pronounce his name
Caliendo,
correctly,
I believe.
But as a senior, ranked third in the country, 9-2 on the year. This is one that, man, you believe in LJ, but I mean, the odds are definitely favoring the Iowa senior.
Yeah, it'd be one for LJ that would be really nice to have. I don't know that I would expect it to happen. Caliendo, NCAA finalist last year, just a really good wrestler. It's a tough stretch for LJ, right? Another senior. He's been kind of thrown into the fire this year, and he's handled it pretty well. But with a 10-4 record, but we'll see how that continues this weekend.
And last year, he actually took on Minnow, who moved up to 174 and beat him in a 5-1 decision. So it's gonna be a tough bout. There's no way of putting anything else on that. But then you get up to Chris Minto, and at 174, he's taking on Patrick Kennedy, which Kennedy last year, he was taking on, or Kennedy lost to Nebraska's Lenny Pinto, but and that was a high scoring bout. Holy cow, 18-11. But Minnow of late just keeps pumping out wins. And I think that if you're Nebraska, you have to be confident in the sophomore. I think although he's facing a tough dude, I think that Nebraska sits well at 174.
Yeah, I think that Iowa kind of took a little bit of the playbook out of I took a little bit of Manning's playbook last week. They didn't wrestle Kennedy. Gabe Arnold, who's going to probably wrestle at 184 this week. He wrestled at 174 against Levi Haynes. This is a matchup where I really think Minto feeds off the crowd, and he's just kind of a showman out there. He really does a good job of dominating the mat. A lot of power, technique, and I think it's one Nebraska can take.
Absolutely. And then that gets us up to our next bouts at 184. Speaking of which, Angelo Ferrari, it's essentially he's all but confirmed out for this bout. He he was struggling again. He lost his first bout of the year. That's AJ's brother, but it's that, and therefore it's going to be, I believe, Gabe Arnold at 184. Taking on Silas Allred.
Yeah, I don't expect to see Ferrari this weekend. You saw, like we were talking about with the Brand's press conference, a little bit of, uncertainty, uncomfortableness when he was talking to the media. You saw the stats about how often he wrestled from a knee last week. I don't expect to see that at all. Um, I think 184 and 197. I think you have to get some bonus points between one of those two. One has to be a major decision. Um, Arnold's a tough opponent, though. He's unranked. He's actually ranked, I believe, 17th on WrestleStat. Obviously, we don't go off of that, but it just shows with his 9-2 record
Yeah.
this year that he's not. It's not going to be a shoe-in victory for Allred.
Well, last year, I mean, it went to sudden victory between these two, Allred and Arnold. So you still know it's going to go. But Allred, although he lost his bout in sudden victory this past week, he actually moved up to number 7 in the Intermac rankings, and so it's going to be a hell of a match. But you never know. I mean, he hasn't been Iowa's top guy this year at 184. So maybe this is where Nebraska can use that veteran presence of Allred that's been in the lineup consistently all year. Maybe push him over. And you mentioned the crowd as well. And then at 197, McDaniel. I thought McDaniel wrestled a hell of a match this past Friday. We were, last week we were, I wouldn't say calling him out. We were saying, man, McDaniel just doesn't have that explosion per se that you see from some of these other guys in Nebraska's lineup.
Yeah, I think we were completely wrong if you would have compared that statement to what we saw against Minnesota, against Gavin Nelson. I mean, he had Nelson flying around all over the mat. He looked really good. I think the best that he's looked all season. Had that 7-2 victory. And against either Sampson or Ludington this weekend, like we kind of talked about, I like a major decision there. Sampson got pinned against Penn State. I believe Josh Barr, number 1, and that's just 3 minutes into the match. So I like McDaniel.
Well, it just keeps setting up for Nebraska to, I mean, Iowa's transferred in 197 guy who was a 3-time Division III national champion there, is no longer with the team. So Iowa's down 2 of its best grapplers in the lineup. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right by saying that this is the bout where Nebraska, this will probably be within 4 or 5 points at least, maybe even tied by the time you get to McDaniel. This is the bout that could decide for the entire duel.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And when you put it on paper and you get to this point, it sets up as Nebraska's best opportunity to beat Iowa in recent memory.
And then AJ has himself another ranked match against number 8 Ben Cuter. I believe. Hope I didn't botch that name, but that's a sophomore taking on Ferrari. I'm going to take Ferrari still. There's something about him. Last week, I thought he looked really well. And with all the commotion surrounding him, for him to essentially ride him the whole third period, that's tough to do, especially at that weight.
Yeah, it was an impressive third period where he used offense and defense to hold on for the win. Cooter, I think, is going to be a little bit difficult. He's a former world champion. He's an All-American, just a sophomore. Limited action a little bit this year, 3-2. I have Ferrari as well. I think when it comes down to that, it's a home mat. I mean, you have the experience there with AJ. I lean towards him.
Well, and just imagine, we're assuming Nebraska does start at 125. Just imagine Devaney if this bout is within 3 to 4 points or the score is within 3 to 4 points at this moment in time to decipher the duel. Holy cow. I'm with you on that. Now, Kyler, I think I know Nebraska, it's been over 2 decades since Nebraska's beaten the Hawkeyes, but at the same time, I think Nebraska's found its stride this season. I'm looking, just the trajectory keeps going upward. I think this is Nebraska's night. Now, I haven't released a score prediction, but I'm leaning towards the Huskers at home. I got to know, though, where are you sitting at right now?
Yeah, Nebraska haven't beaten the Hawkeyes since 2005. They haven't beaten them at the Devaney Center since 1993. So I think this year's as good as any to break that streak. I do lean Nebraska as well, and I think it just comes down to the heavyweights. Once you get past Taylor, I really don't see other than the Caliendo Arujo match, I don't see. I mean, I don't see Nebraska losing any of those, to be honest.
And it's tough to predict these duels. It really is. I mean, to go in and think, well, might be a major here and or something, or you think, ah, Otasinki's get a decision, and then the dude pins him. I mean, it's tough to predict. But anyway, guys, appreciate y'all watching. Be sure once again to follow myself at bschneider33 and at Dugout Cox on Twitter. Like, comment, and subscribe. Share your comments. And if you want to sponsor this show, shoot me a DM. For Bobby Schneider and Kyler Cox, signing off.